to another video from Flow and Flower Farm. Today we're going to be focusing on the topic of soil microbes and flowers. I decided to pick this topic because I have a microbiology background and I just listened to a new podcast that really inspired me to talk a little bit about how soil microbes might impact your flowers and the way that they grow. So a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about what is soil, what are microbes, how they work together, some things that you should consider using on your farm or not using, and different ways to improve microbial activity. I would say this video is good for people who are just gardeners, who have maybe a hobby farm, or somebody just trying to learn a little bit more about how microbes can influence the plants in their garden or farm without having to have a large background knowledge about them, and just kind of want the nitty-gritty about how it can help them or not. I feel like there's a lot of great information about this out there, but I found that it was really confusing and kind of hard to navigate, especially if you didn't have a background in microbiology or science. The goal for this video is to make the connection between your garden or farm and microbiology a little bit easier. So, what is soil? There's so many different types of soil. But I want to be clear that soil is not just dirt. Soil is about 25% air, 25% water, it's 45% minerals, and about 5% organic matter. And of course, these things fluctuate depending on where you're at and what kind of soil you're looking at. One of the main things to consider is that soil is found on most land in the world. What is soil? Soil is not just dirt. Soil is 25% air, 25% water, 45% minerals, and 5% organic matter. And all of these things and different components are working together to support all life on Earth. Soil is found on almost all land in the world. And it's really our job to make sure it's healthy and is providing functions to the ecosystems and places we live. This soil, as you find out, it's ever evolving. Soil isn't constant, it's changing, it's living, and is more than just, having a pretty lawn. Soil is probably the main component of most gardens and farms, but is often overlooked. A lot of people don't even necessarily test their soil. So much going on underneath our feet all the time that we just constantly overlook it. So, what are microbes? I think most people believe that microbes are viruses and bacteria. In the plant world, people might know a lot more about fungi as well. But these are the 5 main microbes in the world. There's bacteria, archaea, fungi, algae, and viruses. All of these things are found everywhere. Maybe not algae as much, but these different microbes, they call it ubiquitous. They are just found in every little nook and cranny around the world. Archaea, I feel like, are less talked about, but they are similar to bacteria, but they can really survive in some extreme environments that you wouldn't even believe. Bacteria have a huge role in plant health and productivity. There's 1 million bacteria on just one leaf of a plant. And for comparison, there's over 10 trillion microbes on you and inside you. They are found everywhere. Microbes are just a vital part of every ecosystem on Earth. They're too small to see with the naked eye, so you have to use a microscope to see most of them. They can live in all environments. There's no getting rid of microbes. There might be getting rid of certain types, but they will quickly be, that empty space gets quickly taken over by a different microbe. So when you think of that clean space, it probably has microbes on it still. So microbial diversity, this is how many different types of microbes are found on different parts of a plant. And this picture here is complicated, but to break it down, there's this picture of a plant, and there's different parts of a plant that are labeled in the yellow boxes. Those pie charts represent the different types of bacteria or fungi found on those different parts of a plant. And you notice that the percentages of the different bacteria, it changes depending on bacteria or fungi, changes depending on the location of the plant. But know that not one part of that plant doesn't have a variety of different species of bacteria and fungi. Having a diverse group of microbes on your plant is amazing for that plant. It is what that plant has evolved to live with. It leads to an increase in plant health, an increase in disease resistance, and an increase in the stress tolerance of that plant. A plant can't grow by itself that well. It needs all these bacteria and fungi to be healthy and to produce, in my case, a lot of flowers. So speaking of microbes and your flowers, bacteria in particular are a vital resource for them. They're found in your plants. And there's actually a lot of bacteria that travel in the seeds of the plants that help the new plants and seedlings get started on their journey. They are a vital part of the plant life cycle. They help decompose dead plants. They help the new seedlings start life. Without the bacteria and other microbes, your plants are going to struggle. And a lot of times, there's not enough microbial activity to have as healthy plants as we could. So this idea of an ecosystem, plants, soil, microbes, humans, all of us and all these living things are working together. And plants mutually benefit from each other. Okay? Plants benefit because bacteria help provide nutrients and food for them to survive. They also help with the root growth of new plants and established plants. Microbes benefit too. They're not doing this for free. Plants provide shelter, temperature regulation, gives them food. Microbes need plants to survive as well. And when we deprive our ecosystem of both of these things, plants and microbes, it is not as vibrant, it is not as healthy, and it is going to show in the products that you are creating in your garden or farm environment. So, I'm not here to tell you how to farm, how to run your garden, but I do want you to consider these 3 things. Having bare soil. Bare soil without plants or covers removes that protection, that layer of protection of your soil to all the living things in the soil. They need to be protected. They need to be covered by plants or a tarp or something to help regulate the temperature, to help not get flooded out. So having bare soil for long periods of time can really negatively impact the amount of microbial activity in your soil. Tilling. Tilling is any sort of disturbance to the ground, whether it's using a tiller, whether it's broad forking, shoveling. That all can disrupt the structure. There's a major structure in your soil for these microbes to live and thrive. When you are moving that dirt around, creating different quantities of air and dirt, moving where seeds and things are normally found, it disrupts the life cycle. It disrupts the microbial growth. Bacteria can grow very quickly in the right conditions. But when we disturb that soil constantly or frequently, it's going to be really hard for the microorganisms to rebound and really grow and thrive to help your future seedlings produce the best fruit or flowers that they can. And another thing to consider using in large quantities in your garden or farm are chemical sprays, even the natural organic ones. Adding in outside sources like this can have more negative impacts to the microorganisms than we realize. Okay, you can be killing things, especially if you're doing these sprays mindlessly. I want you to consider these things, not to say you can't do them, but to consider the amount that you are doing these things. Is there a way to reduce the sprays or the movement of the soil to improve the microbial health of your soil? So, after describing some of the different ways that microbes are needed for your plants and that plants are needed for your microbes in this great ecosystem that we have on Earth that we can use to grow beautiful flowers, plants. These are some different things that you could do to improve the microbial activity at your location. Most of these ideas can be used anywhere or everywhere. The main goal is to increase the amount of microbial activity in your soil. The more diverse microbes you have in your soil, the healthier, more disease-resistant, and stress-resistant your crops are going to be. So, the first one, homemade garden amendments. There are some fantastic ways to improve the local microorganisms in your soil that does not cost a lot of money. There's such things like compost tea or leaf mold tea that you can use and make yourself and it just takes a short amount of time to then add to your garden or soil environment to increase the microbial activity using the microbes found around your location. If you didn't know this, there are different amounts of microbes and different types and different species of microbes found depending on where you live. That's why things like sourdough starters can have such different tastes depending on where they originate from. Making things like compost tea or leaf mold tea is going to use the natural microorganisms that are found native to your area. It's going to increase the amount of them, and then you're going to add that to your soil. This should be a pretty fast and effective way to improve microbial activity. Another option is to use cover crops. So when you don't have anything growing or that you don't need anything growing on your farm or garden, planting things like maybe winter rye or a wide variety of different crops that you can mow down, and maybe in those winter months, instead of having bare soil, having something growing and living in your soil as much as possible will just help those microbes survive. The moment you take living plants from that ground, you're depriving those microorganisms from food. You're depriving those microorganisms from shelter. Having crops of some sort in the ground as much as possible is only going to help the amount of microbes that you have in your soil. Another option is to have a large diversity of crops or have intercropping of different crops in the same bed. This leads to more variety and more diversity of microorganisms because every plant has different quantities of different microorganisms on them. So when you have a variety of plants that you're growing, you're going to have a larger variety and diversity of microorganisms, which will only help the resistance and tolerance of your garden or farm to diseases and other pathogens that could be found in the area. And last but not least, native species. Native species are plants that have been established in your environment for long periods of time. They were not imported. Most of the things we grow are not native to the area we live. So adding more species that are native, which have evolved with the microorganisms in our environment, will only increase the health of our soil and the microorganisms and the plants around us to kind of have this one big happy area. Thanks for watching that video. I hope that you learned a little bit more about soil health and microbes and how it can help you grow better, more beautiful, more disease-resistant flowers at your location.